Hey, how'd you enjoy that? Isn't it? Is anyone have a dry eye in the house? No, I think that's it. What a beautiful movie, and how lucky are we to live down in this part of the world with these amazing animals. So now we're going to have a little chat about what's going on. I'm lucky to have three wonderful guests, three colleagues of mine that I've worked with over the years, and I would ask them to come up and have a seat, please. So obviously we've got Dr. Boyd Wilkes, star of the show. Dr. Rob Davis from Edith Cowan University. They can just have the... And last, but far from least, the wonderful Dr. Simone Vitali. Okay, where to start? So we've got about 30 minutes. Christy's going to tell me when I've got to wind up, right? Yeah. Boyd, let's start with you, star of the show. This amazing movie and amazing work that you've been doing. Would you like to give us a bit of an update about how the campaign is going with the rat bait?
I will, but I'll say a few words that I need to say first.
Please do. And introduce yourself if you want to introduce more.
Yeah, some people call me the star of this show, but Sue Taylor, the producer, says I'm the character. And every film like this needs a character, which isn't it's someone to hold the story together. And from Sue's point of view, she's the most amazing film producer, as you saw. I need to say that this film was made without a budget. It was made entirely through Sue and her friends and the time she has put in as a retiree. Yeah. And we were telling a number of stories there, and one is just the story of people like me who are probably on a spectrum, and that we just get obsessed, and sometimes you just focus on one thing. She brought the camera out and just said, look, can we help with the rodenticide campaign? And I'll just follow you around. And that's what happened as Sue followed us around. It was just extraordinary, and nothing much might have happened, but a lot, didn't it? The campaign on the rodenticides has just been incredible, starting with a small group of us in Margaret River, realising these masked owls, after we knew about the Boo Books, found they fed on rats and mice, realised that from the Boo Book study they were going to be really vulnerable, particularly as they swallow those mice whole. That means they can swallow the poison that's already in the mouse. So it's digestion, primary poisoning really, as well as secondary poisoning. And we found that out just this week. Rob's work, which she'll talk about, is releasing the latest figures on liver testing of our masked owls. But every one of 17 masked owls I think we tested had toxicity, some of it lethal, even though they'd been hit by cars or found in other ways. Rob says if that's the measure for the whole population, we shouldn't have a population. So they're under enormous pressure. But the owl-friendly group that's just started responding to that knowledge has become Owl-Friendly Margaret River, Owl-Friendly Nannup, Owl-Friendly Denmark, Owl-Friendly Mundaring, Owl-Friendly a lot of Perth councils, Owl-Friendly the whole Midwest, starting out of Geraldton and around Australia. That's a lot of work at the grassroots level, getting out to good people like yourselves, but missing a lot of people as well. And if you go into the shops, you're just going to be confronted by a whole lot of those what we call second generation, one dose kills, persistent rodenticides. So right now we're at a period where the federal agency is put out a review to suggest this is how they're going to manage that risk to all sorts of wildlife, pets, kids, and it's inadequate. And I think we might get on to more of that from Rob, but that's where we are right now. I had a meeting with the City of Bunbury and some local groups, including the South West NRM today, and City Bunbury is declared owl-friendly and is now ramping up that campaign. Had a meeting this week with residents from the Bustleton, but really it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to get this at the source and get these, particularly these second-generation anticoagulants, banned from Australia.
There's a giant QR code behind you. Can you just tell us what that's about?
You can find out all you need at Owl-Friendly Margaret River, and outside you'll find the BirdLife stand, and BirdLife Australia is one of a number of ways in which this is being tackled as a campaign right across Australia.
Wonderful. Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Floyd. I'm going to throw to Rob now. I'll just ask if you first just introduce yourself, who you are, where you work, with, your wonderful history, and then maybe tell us a little bit about, the role you've played in this as well.
Sure. Thank you, Manda. Rob Davis. I'm Associate Professor at Edith Cowan University. My story started in a meeting in a coffee shop at Hillary's with a dodgy American guy. So, like all good stories, and that dodgy American guy was Mike Law, who was a impending PhD student. He had done a master's in the US and he had moved to Australia. And he said to me, Rob, I've heard you're interested in birds and I'm really keen. I've got this idea. I think that Australia has a big problem with poisoning of wildlife. It's really well known in the US, really well known in Europe, but there doesn't seem to be anything done here. So he slowly convinced me. He had the credentials and he'd make a great PhD student. I said, look, you're a great guy, Mike, I'll take you on, but honestly, I don't think you're going to find anything. And he says he wishes to this day we'd had a wager about that because he would be pretty well off. And so the main work he did in his PhD, his first chapter, he got people to provide him with dead roadkill boobook owls from across the Perth and South West region. And that's a statistic you saw there. When we crunched all the numbers, we got those livers analysed. 75% of all those boobooks had lethal or potentially lethal levels of poisoning. So that's 3/4 of all of the most common owl that you get out there. So that really started to open our eyes. So Mike did some great work in his thesis, and when he finished, we did a little side project, and we thought, let's have a look at reptiles. And one of my colleagues at Curtin had a lot of dead snakes and bobtail lizards in his freezer from another study. We'll keep that story short. And so we're able to analyse those. And that's when it started to get really concerning. The bobtail, peaceful lizard in your back garden that likes eating tomatoes, not known for eating lots of rats and mice, about 50% of our bobtails had really high levels of rodenticide in them. Particularly, this is the second generation coagulants. Brodificum is pretty much the number one thing that we're detecting here. And then the tiger snake, about half of all tiger snakes. You might think, yeah, it's a snake, but tiger snakes, based on all the studies we know, they love eating frogs, not really rats and mice. Some might occasionally, but there's pretty high levels. And then the dugite, the common brown snake, of course, in the southwest, 90% of them had really high levels of rodenticide. So that was a bit of a moment, going, wow, this is going beyond just birds. It was pretty well known in owls and other places. We're now finding it in reptiles. And just to conclude this, so I don't take all the talking time, Manda, the most recent study we just published last year, we looked at the quolls and Tasmanian devils across Australia, so Australia's top order carnivores. And in a world first, unfortunately, we found very high levels in nearly all of those species. And in fact, a Chuditch or western quoll in Perth that was found sick under a house and eventually died had about 3 to 4 times the lethal levels that we know would definitely kill most mammals. And we believe maybe among the world's highest detected levels in any mammal. It was ridiculously out there. And so we are killing our quolls, Tasmanian devils. Another study from colleagues on the East Coast have found frogs have high levels of rodenticides in them as well. A recent study overseas showed invertebrates are carrying rodenticides, and this is probably a pathway. So really what we've discovered, unfortunately, is really deep penetration into the ecosystem. And in fact, a study that Simone may know at Perth Zoo, a dead Carnaby's cockatoo was analysed and they found evidence of rodenticide in its liver as well. So we are seeing really deep penetration of these products through the ecosystem. They're very long lasting, and Brodificum in particular, which is in most of the products most people buy, it has a half-life that could be as long as 200 days. So it's there for much of the year, as opposed to some of these first generation products breaking down in a couple of weeks at the most, even days potentially. So I'll leave it at that, Manda.
Thanks, Rob. Yeah, it's really scary, isn't it? And, without the research that had to happen, to get to really raise this awareness to the point now that we can actually actively do something about it, and we have the data and evidence to prove that it's a problem. And so concerning that it crosses so many species. It's quite horrifying. Now, Simone Vitali, could you please introduce yourself and what you do? And I don't know if you want to weigh in on this particular thing in your specialised field, or if you want to talk more broadly about what you're doing.
Thanks, Manda. You'll have to excuse my voice. I'm getting over a lurgy, but I don't usually sound this sexy. But I'm Simone Vitali. I'm Program Manager for Emergencies with Wildlife Health Australia, which is the peak body for wildlife health in Australia. We're not government, we're government adjacent, we like to say. And so for all the amazing people on the spectrum, Boyd, that are doing passionate work at the ground level, we're working more at the policy and strategy level to try and translate that to something meaningful that can penetrate through. Our vision is healthy wildlife, healthy planet. And what we're trying to get to with that vision is that everything that we do to wildlife, we're doing to our system and we're doing to ourselves. So that means that we need to be considering wildlife in all spectrums of all issues that we're facing as a country. And when we talk about wildlife health, we're talking about not just the diseases that you think of, infectious diseases and so on, but also pollutants and also environmental disasters and so on. So my remit is a very wide one, looking at emergencies. And so Wildlife Health Australia is looking at the APVMA. We'll be putting in a submission to the APVMA as well, coming at it from a different perspective, I guess, because we do work at that policy and strategy level, but informed by the sort of work that Boyd's doing and the knowledge that we have of what how incredibly difficult it is to get toxicology information and data on wildlife across the board, because wildlife die where we can't find them. We don't have normals, in inverted commas, for these animals. We can't always associate the burdens that we're seeing with an obvious clinical impact. And that doesn't mean that there isn't a health impact, but it's not like these animals are turning up at a doctor's clinic and knocking on the door and saying, I don't feel great. We generally only find them when we're dealing with something terminal. And that's not really helpful for building the sort of data that a body like the APVMA is used to looking at. So part of our job is trying to demonstrate how we look at wildlife and wildlife impacts in a different way to get meaningful change. So, yeah.
Yeah, all doing amazing work, and we are very lucky to have you advocating for wildlife on behalf of us all. I had a question, and maybe Simone, she didn't mention that she's an amazing background as well, whether you could ask this, but Boyd, you as well, from our perspective. What happens, like, how does it manifest into the animals? Like, we talked about, we saw on the movie that we think more owls are getting hit by cars. So, what does this poison do to them? So, your research shows that it's in the liver, but, how does it affect them?
Do you want me to go first? All right. I'll talk generally about what anticoagulant rodenticides do, which is, as the name suggests, they affect blood clotting. And so in cases where you get, I guess, poisoning that happens, the way they kill rats is that the rats bleed out. In an animal that's got a sublethal dose, so you get them before they bleed out, what you'll see is bruising, you'll see hemorrhaging into body cavities, you'll see blood in faeces, vomiting blood, that sort of thing, if you're talking about a species that vomits. I've seen in my life before I was a zoo vet, I was in private practice, so I have seen rodenticide poisoning in cats. And that's exactly what you see when you see these animals come in with bruising, clear bruising on their extremities and on their skin with no evidence of trauma. That's when you start to look for that sort of thing. The challenge always with them is that some rodenticides have antidotes, but not all of them, and not the second gens. But the antidote, the second gens do respond to some extent to supplementation with vitamin K, but it's not like a snake bite, for example, as you give the antivenin and you're getting a specific response to that. It's much more spray and pray, and particularly with wildlife, because you're guessing at dose rates and you're trying to use empirical data to get the right impact. And again, as we said, by the time you see these animals, particularly with wildlife, they're very far gone. They're not reporting to you at the early stages, they're reporting at the terminal stages when it's much more difficult to get them back.
So, Boyd, there must be the behavioural things that are going on here too if we're having these issues with more likely car strikes and things. So it's affecting their behaviour and how they act.
They've found a number of the birds that have turned up in the middle of Margaret River, feeding on quenda beautifully around the shops as well as rats and mice and possums. People just find them on the street, in their front gardens. So there's this owl sitting at my back door, and it's just sitting there. So looking very much like the ones that have had car strike there, absolutely. When Nancy Tang, who has cared for a number of these owls, she'll ring me and she'll say, "Mordred's trying to kill me." That's a really good sign. So when one of those beautiful big female masked owls recovers, you want some gloves on and be very careful about handling them. But you just saw how beautifully but comatose those ones were. But you're looking for blood around the bill, etc. If I can, seeing I've got the microphone, say a little bit more about what's being proposed in the recommendations coming out of this review that's taken formally 5 years, 15 years from the Commonwealth Agency, the APVMA. They're basically looking at labelling, putting different things on the labels of these ones. They're saying you can't buy it in such big packets anymore. You've got to buy multiples of small packets. They're silly things like that. We're going to make it on the labelling that you've got to pick up the dead rats in your garden after they've taken the bait. You've got to tell the wildlife not to eat the dead rats. It's as silly as that if you can wade through the many, many pages of gobbledygook in the Gazette. The main thing they're hanging their hat on is that if you buy it at a shop, at the supermarket or a hardware, that you've got to put it in a bait station outdoors if you're putting it outdoors. So these are bait stations that you need a key to get into. They're secure from you, me, the average dog or cat. But anything that can get into that bait station, the size of a rat or a mouse, any wildlife, a lizard, the bill of a bird or whatever, can get it. And then what comes out of it. So I wanted to hand over to Rob and talk about a study that we're just writing up and submitting to the APVMA. We put it through in the first lot. We're giving it another go with a more thorough one. But it was done here at Bunbury TAFE. It's a really interesting study that just shows what we now know about what we think is one of the main ways that a householder or a pest controller is deploying these baits and what happens to those baits in an outdoor bait station.
Thanks, Boyd. At the ECU Bunbury campus, we did an elegantly simple experiment some years ago. We just put remote camera traps on bait boxes. But before we did that, we got them to remove the poisonous baits and replace them, the manufacturer replaced them with a blank. So everything's the same, but without that active ingredient of brodifacoum in that case. And we ran that for about a year. And what we found was quite surprising. The most explosive picture was the species of conservation significance, the brush-tailed phascogale, entirely in a bait box with just its tail protruding. We had 279 different magpies putting their heads in bait boxes over that time. We had 50 king skinks putting their heads inside bait boxes, ravens, in total 25 different native fauna species were recorded interacting with those bait boxes. So the evidence was pretty conclusive. And those are just the actual interactions with them rather than things just walking past and sniffing. And so, as Boyd said, the APVMA has said that in their new regulations, using tamper-proof bait boxes should pretty much stop any primary exposure to wildlife. So it's quite clear. That's basically a load of rubbish, and that is not the case. And it's quite clear, of course, that any small wildlife will get in there anyway. And it's worth remembering we have a lot of native rodents throughout Australia as well. So, of course, they are always at risk. So we're not dealing just with secondary exposure, that is your owls eating poison rats and mice from your house, but if not done properly, wildlife can access these baits, even commercial bait boxes, let alone what I see on the Facebook garden sites with people saying, I've got a rat problem, I threw baits all around my backyard, which is in contravention to every single thing on every packet. But according to the APVMA, they will relabel the packets to make it clear you shouldn't use them outside, and that will stop the problem. Or am I being sceptical?
That was the big surprise, how much primary poisoning. The secondary poisoning is just common sense. It didn't need that science. The rats and the mice are coming out after eating it, but so are all the invertebrates and all these other things, and they're coming out and being eaten. What's amazing with the imagery is to see a boobook owl standing outside waiting for things to come out, to see the ravens and the magpies waiting outside, anything that's coming out. And the researchers doing this were finding centipedes, cockroaches, slugs, snails, all in there eating the bait. They don't have red blood, the invertebrates. They're not poisoned by an anticoagulant. So they're just little moving bits of rodenticide coming out into the environment.
And that's probably one of the bigger risks. I mean, I think, you know, that I guess you can argue that Fasca girl going in would find a block of wax and go, I don't care, I'm not going to do anything with that, go away. But because there is this mobility of live bait, not only with rodents but also with invertebrates, that is demonstrated, it does mean that you're getting a rapid and, you know, high frequency removal of live bait out of those systems in lethal doses. And we've also seen rodents will take chunks of the blocks and take them away and scatter them around as well. They're messy eaters. And so there's a lot of ways that can still go amiss.
Thanks, guys. I'm getting the wrap up soon, so we've only got a few minutes left. That half hour went really fast. So I really applaud all the work that you do, as you all know, and raising awareness of this specific issue, I think, is fantastic. There's still a way to go, but, you know, it's amazing we've done that. But I just maybe just finish off of a comment from each of you about, you know, what else can we do as good citizens trying to live with wildlife, help keep them healthy, because we do enjoy living with them. Do you have one key thing that people can do to live with wildlife and help having a healthier environment? You want to start, Rob?
Sure. I'm going to take the easy one because I think that...
That's what you get for going first.
that basically this is the most elegantly, simply solved problem that facing us today. Just stop using second-generation rodenticides and you'll save a lot of wildlife. There's so many big problems, climate change, all of these things. They're very hard for us as individuals. If tomorrow you make a better choice, use Rat Sack Naturals, some of the first-generation products like Warfarin or Coumatetrol in them, I can guarantee you, at least from the perspective of what we found through research on almost everything, they're not really penetrating very deeply into the ecosystem. So you're going to make a really big impact on wildlife right there. So
and tell all your friends and family to do the same thing.
Exactly.
Do you want to go next, Simone?
Sure, I'll go highbrow.
Go high.
We're all a system. It's called an ecosystem for a reason. We're part of it. We're not separated from it. We're not isolated from it. Remembering that in everything we do is important, and trying to remember that as isolating as it can feel to be a human, we are so much a part of what is going on around us, and we can be such advocates for anything that's going on in wildlife and in our environment, because it is our environment too. And so that comes with great advantages, but it comes with great responsibilities too. So I really encourage you to find the way that speaks to you, and find your little autism thing and go with it, because it's all part of it's. If we're all in boats going down the same river, doesn't matter if we're not all in the same boat. So find your thing and go with it.
Lovely analogy. Thank you. Yeah. Boyd?
I'm going to have 2 bites at this, Chair.
Okay.
One, I'm looking at my wife, Karen Major, there, who's been the science communicator in this whole campaign, and I'm thinking what she would say. And I think the bottom line is, if you do go on and put a submission into this review that ends on 16th of March, you'll see that it's saying you need to have some science or be questioning their methodology. I'd question their methodology and their science, but you may not know much more than the words that you're being offered in the guidance, but do send it also to the ministers involved, which is you'll have that direction, because believe me, the federal ministers involved in this are listening at the moment and are rather shocked and overwhelmed at the response that's coming from across the country. But if you have individual experience, if you've been involved in any wildlife care, if you've had any experience yourself or someone you know who's had a pet poisoned, that is circumstantial evidence. That's your evidence. Include that in it, and that makes it individual and powerful. That was my first part.
Okay. Part 2.
Second one, we're in a world of increasing separation from our environment, and that film was a lot about just immersing in, for me, in the night and being comfortable in that night environment and finding something special there. So immersion for the kids, immersion for the families. I think it's possible for humans to just become disconnected, and then you're not going to have the basis for caring. So be out there and involved, and let's just be in that environment, and you'll naturally be caring for it. And that's through our groups such as the South West NRM, through the Leschenelt group, through the BirdLife. Get it behind and get supported by those organisations.
Thanks, Boyd. I look forward to next time going out spotlighting with you. Okay, I got the microphone, so I get to say the last word. I am lucky enough to have worked in threatened species recovery for 30 years. I know I don't look that old, and across Queensland and Western Australia. And there is so much that every individual can do. The species that we share this planet with deserve to be here as much as we do, and we can all play our part. So there's lots of little things you can do. I urge you to be responsible pet owners, cats and dogs. I urge you to plant wonderful, amazing native plants in your garden, and I know Leschenelt Catchment Council have got some great stuff out there on both of those things, I think. BirdLife have got a stand out there. There's some stuff out there from us. So please take your time to go and have a drink, have something to eat, chat to the people on the tables out there. And I know I'm probably preaching to the converted, because you're all probably here because you already do care about the environment. But keep doing that, find your voice, and we'll see you at the next event. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Dave.